Real Talk with Grace Redman features conversations with fierce and fabulous people from Grace's community and circle who inspire others with their stories of overcoming challenges to create amazing. Grace is an entrepreneur and success coach who works with individuals to diminish their negative mental chatter, boost their confidence, achieve their goals, and increase their prosperity mindset. Get ready for a series of anything goes conversations with remarkable men and women that will get you jazzed for life's unlimited possibilities of success, freedom, and fun. Welcome to Real Talk with Grace Redman. I'm Grace Redman, and thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Real Talk, where I get to have real life, raw conversations with incredible people from my circles and communities who have overcome challenges and created amazing. Today, my courageous and incredible guest is Agi Keramidas. Agi is the host of Personal Development Mastery Podcast, and his mission is to influence and inspire his listeners to stand out and take actions towards the next level of their lives. His podcast ranks in the global top 2%, which is so impressive. And he has interviewed over 150 influencers, some of the most well-known being Brian Tracy and Dr. John DeMartini. Thank you so much, Agi, for being here. And I'm so excited to have you join me today.
Grace, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you very much. I'm very much looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to have you because your story, Agi, just when we connected and, you shared with me, it's really courageous and inspiring. And you did something that so many of us dream about, but just never do. So if you can kind of tell us a little bit about your story and taking that leap of faith.
Yes, so I take it you mean my when I moved from Greece, which is my home country,
Yeah,
to the UK,
yeah.
because there have been other transitions or leaps of faith, but that's certainly the one that stands out to most people. I will give a very brief version of what was going on. I was around in my early 30s. I was living in my hometown in Greece, and on the outside, my life seemed to be everything that one would like to have. So I had my dental practice. I'm a dentist by profession.
Amazing.
My family to support me, friends. I was engaged to be married, but something didn't feel right. I felt very empty inside, and that I couldn't figure out what it was. But eventually, I really decided. And you'll probably ask me more about that in a moment. But the short version is that I decided to follow my intuition or a calling that I was feeling to move to the UK. England was some kind of a dream that I had since I was a teenager. I couldn't explain why it was.
Mm.
And eventually, after a long deliberation and having to go through, fears or other things in my head, I took the big decision and I went with a one-way ticket in one flight back in 2010 and came on my own to the UK to start a new life. And it was one of those things that really opened up a completely different life for me. And reaching us to this moment where I'm having this conversation with you, which is amazing. And I will take a little pause here.
It's so amazing. And I'm going to take you back. And that was in 2010 when you made
Yeah.
that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So you used so many words like the calling. You just had this emptiness, this feeling. And, as a coach and connecting with so many people, I've heard that before and I've felt it before. What's incredible to me is that like you said, you had this incredible life and you had everything that we all, dream of, a great career, a fiance about to get married, family, and you still made that decision to leave that behind. I mean, the fear. I can't imagine the fear that you're feeling. what inspired you to kind of push through that fear to do something so courageous, to come to another country on your own and leave everything behind? Like, how did you overcome that fear?
It's a great question, and I think there were two aspects on that. The first was the situation I was in. I really was not feeling good in here. There was a discontent, an emptiness inside that I really couldn't understand, and that was leading me to drinking a lot. I was smoking. It was really a pathway towards really bad things happening, and so that as an uncomfortable present situation which was going on and on was one of the elements, shall we say, that allow me to deal with the fear, because I really didn't like where I was. I needed to do some, I wanted to do something about it. The other one, so the other one was trust. It was that feeling, every time I would think about another life in England, that calling, and it's not easy to explain in words, but I'm sure that you can relate, and some
Absolutely.
people who listen will relate for sure.
Absolutely.
It was whenever I would think about moving and changing my life, I would feel joy. I would feel something happy inside of me, like, bubbling up and ending up with a big smile on my face, daydreaming. And the more this was happening, it felt like, there is something throwing me there. I will take the plunge. What's the worst thing that might happen? If everything goes wrong, I can always come back. So
Yeah.
these were, some of the elements that I thought. And funnily enough, now that I said this, that about coming back, um, I never, not once, had that thought from the day I moved to the UK. From the day of the flight, there was not a single day that I thought, oh, I could go back. It was a new life, and I remember the song, it's a new dawn, a new day, a new life
Yes.
for me.
Mhm.
So yeah, things started happening, synchronicities, good things. I'm not saying there were not big challenges moving on my own to a different country. There were, but there were also amazing support from which I would have never expected or known before. Mm.
I just got the chills because the feeling you talk of, like, that calling, that guidance. And you're right. It's not something that can be explained. However, I know you understand, and those who are watching, I'm sure understand. It's like that intuition that's just pulling you, like you don't know why you're being pulled. And also what what resonated for me was, like you said, you had this great life all on the outside, but internally you felt like something was missing and you were masking it through the drinking and smoking, which I can relate to. I've been in periods of my life where I've done that. And this speaks to, um, it's not what's outside of us that brings us joy, it's what's within us. And you were guided to follow that intuition, which most of us stay stuck. Um, you know, we stay stuck in the fear, but you took that plunge, and each way you, it seems like you were guided, and the synchronicity showed up. Not that there weren't challenges, like you said, but what was one of your greatest challenges at that time where now you see that it wasn't a challenge, it was an opportunity?
The challenge when I moved, you mean, when I started the
Yes. Or whatever
the
you want to share.
I think the challenge that comes to mind when you share that, actually, I will share two if you want. The one that first came to mind was when I moved. I was completely on my own. There was no one there that I knew, like a friend or a family member. I mean, I had I had recruited to a dental position as an associate somewhere, so I did have colleagues, but it was not
I lost you.
the same. Really mind that much. I knew that all the other factors were stacking up, and it was a matter of time. Yeah, and maybe a challenge in the past. We discussed about it. It was mostly the fears of doing the big change, which yeah, we discussed about how the main ways I overcame them. So in terms of challenges, there were so many times, but there were equally many times that they were beautiful, and I could see that I was doing some things that I would never dream of doing while I was living my life in Greece. It took time. It happened little by little, but I had opportunities that I wasn't able to. And in the end, because it was my dream, it was my calling. What I did, and I think it's important uh, to share that and emphasize that. That's the word I was looking for. That actually, I kind of lost a little bit the
That's
drift
okay.
of where I was going.
That's
So yeah,
okay.
it will come
Yeah.
back to me. But yeah, there were many challenges and equal opportunities for growth, and it's been a wonderful journey since it all started, and it's still going on.
Yeah, and it will continue. And
Mm.
one thing I wanted to ask you was when you made that decision to leave, I'm sure there was a lot of resistance from, your family, the people in community, your fiance. And how did you overcome that resistance from them? Because sometimes, we worry so much about what other people say. How did you overcome that?
I was very lucky and blessed to have my family supporting me because they could see my desire.
Mm.
My fiance was really not, it was on the opposite side because she wanted to stay in Greece. So uh, I think to answer your question, I overcame them in exactly how I was sharing earlier. First, I had the push that I can't keep doing this, living this life much longer. And on the other hand, I had this faith, this belief that whatever was on the other side was the right thing for me.
So with you saying that, that reminds me of a saying. It's like you get so uncomfortable with being uncomfortable that you get pushed out of that zone.
Mhm.
It- Can you s- is that can you say that's how you felt? Like you're just so uncomfortably being uncomfortable, you couldn't live like that anymore. So it didn't matter what was going on around you.
It's interesting because I never thought how these two factors, which one was the more of the two. I
Mhm.
think more than the uncomfortableness was the inspiration of what
Yeah.
was calling me. And I realized that the moment I started thinking about it more and more, it was then because I was reading at that time a little bit of personal development. So I had a little idea at that time, but I could see that the next day when I started announcing it, I had a patient that had lived in England for a
Yeah.
year. So immediately he started giving me feedback. And then I was very lucky to find a job while I was still in Greece via a recruitment company that came to Athens looking for dentists. So I could see that these were, one after the other were happening. So, when you have these little reassurances, it's easier to cope with the fear, the discomfort, the sadness of leaving people that you love behind and eventually breaking up. uh, but it was yeah, that was the path, Grace, and you're bringing me back now, and I will share that because I haven't talked about this particular part of my story for quite a while, actually. So thank you for bringing me back there to share.
You're so welcome. It feels magical to me because also as you're sharing, it's reminding me that if you want to use the word universe, God always has our back. And when we have a desire, we put it out, those the steps, the information, the people, the possibilities start lining up for us. And I think sometimes we forget that. So thank you so much for that magical reminder um, today that when we put it out there, and you also use the word faith. When we have faith, it's an incredible I mean, I believe that when we have faith and believe that those things will line up, because like you said, you had a dream. So
Mhm.
I believe that God plans the dream for the reason, for a reason. It's not there just coincidentally. So what
Absolutely.
was your dream? You talked about a dream. As a young kid, you wanted to come to England. What was the dream?
That's the most probably the most interesting thing, because I didn't know what it was, the
Mhm.
dream. It was it was very vague. I knew that as a teenager I was very fascinated by anything English, like the pop music of the 80s, which I grew up with, or when I was seeing the cars drive on the other side of the street. All this I found it for some reason intriguing, and always was drawn to it. But I had no idea what was the dream about, what would happen. I mean, it took me many years to start seeing what was happening, that it was a journey. And still, if you ask me now, I have an idea, of course, but I won't be able to tell you that I know exactly what's going to lie ahead. I know the path, looking behind me, where I am, and the direction that I want to go. But I keep trusting the journey of life, I mean, and following what feels right
Mhm.
for me. Yeah.
Trusting and feeling what feels right. That's being in
Mhm.
alignment. Being in alignment. One thing again, like you're so inspiring. Of something else that we spoke about was you identify yourself as an introvert, yet here you are interviewing over 150 influencers and having a podcast that is in the top 2% globally. So tell me a little bit about that, like being shy and an introvert, yet here you are with one of the top podcasts. Like, tell, like speak to me about that.
Yes, of course. That was actually one other transition milestone moment in my journey that stands out, when I went from introvert and very reserved in social situations, very shy. I won't speak to someone that I didn't know. I was like that all my life, and I remember once I was at a networking event. The first time I went, someone dragged me to go to a networking event. I really didn't want to go. But at some point, when there was a break and people were meant to network, I didn't know anyone in the room. So I took out my phone and I was pretending that I was speaking on my phone to avoid. I felt really terrible. I didn't want to speak to people. And yes, and that changed very, very quickly when I went to a Tony Robbins event,
Mm,
and I had a big shift there, that this was not, it was a limiting belief. And anyway, it's again a big topic, but to make it very short, after that event, I realized that I had a limiting belief at the back of my mind, and I didn't even know it was a limiting belief. I thought it was who I was, my character. But it wasn't. It was a voice playing like a tape at the back of my head, that people are not interested in what you have to say,
mm,
Agi.
doesn't make me believe.
So, yeah, that was the limiting belief. And every time having that voice that people are not interested, what do I have to say that they won't be interested? So that was the reason why. When I realized that, I started changing very quickly. So after, I think, 6 months from then, I started doing public speaking,
Wow.
and a year afterwards I started my first podcast.
Mm,
So yes, I wouldn't consider myself to be that I changed very much after a while. Again, it was a journey. It didn't happen overnight, but the
sure.
trigger was that
Mhm.
day at that event with Tony Robbins.
It's a process. I'm going to tell you something that is crazy.
Yeah.
Before I got on the podcast with you today, I
Yes.
always inspire myself to listen to something or, meditate or pray. And
Hmm.
today,
Hmm.
before we got on, I was inspired to listen to Tony Robbins. And I'm like, well, this is the universe. Like I'm floored right now because that's exactly what he shared, what you just shared. is we can change. It's our belief. And again, like I'm floored right now. So for those of you watching, I think this is something that really I want to highlight what Augie just said. As he was an introvert, uncovered this limiting belief, and once he was aware of it, that awareness helped him shift. And it wasn't overnight, like you said. It took 6 months, and now you're a podcaster and you speak with strangers, influencers. So that is a testimony that us as human beings are very resilient, and we can absolutely change our patterns through habit.
Yes, we can. And not only did I had the and have the ability to speak with strangers, as you said, I really enjoy doing that, and I find it fascinating to have these conversations, which would terrify me like 6 years ago, for example, whatever it was. So,
Love
yeah.
it. So those of you watching the replay, if there's something that you're afraid of, Augie is just and like I don't even know the word to use, like is an example of you can do what you set your mind on. We can change our path.
Mm.
So can you share with us one of your habits that you're committed to and consistent with that helped you become the top 2% podcaster globally? Not just in the United, I mean, this is globally. What's
Mm.
one of your habits that you can share with us?
Habits, do you mean personal habits or in terms of the podcast habits?
Whatever
I
you like
don't,
to share. I mean, what's helped you become
yes.
successful?
In terms of, I will tell you two things, Grace. In terms of the 2% global, I think the reason, more than I will tell you about habits, but the reason behind that is that I'm very passionate about it. I love it so much. So
Mm, yep.
I was never aiming for that. But
Mhm,
now, of course, I am aiming for even higher than that. But it's because it comes out of passion. Um, in terms of habits, and it's a big topic, but I do have a specific morning routine
mhm,
which I follow every single day, at least some elements of it, not necessarily the whole thing that might take an hour, but some elements of it every single day, no matter what. And things like journaling or meditation or affirmations or some things I do all the time and have done for years
mhm.
and years. That is, yeah, as a habit. I do have a morning routine. It makes a big difference.
And thank you so much for sharing that. And with all the work I've done and my own self development, I mean, I've had a morning routine for many years as well. And I mean, many years ago, um, reading about success and self development, I don't know the percentage, but the majority, if not all, of successful um, individuals have some type of morning routine,
Mm.
consistent that they're consistent and committed with. And like you said, what you said reminded me of the miracle morning. Like you said, you don't take an hour, but you take different elements of the miracle morning. It sounds like the
Mhm.
gratitude, journaling, I think meditation, moving your body. So, like you said, it could be any of those elements, whatever you choose, but as long as you're
Mhm.
committed and consistent to it, and here you are today, just constantly kicking ass.
Thank you. uh,
So,
Routines build up,
yes,
and small things build momentum, and momentum over time builds compounds and leads
that's right.
to exponential results. But you just have to do the little things
Mhm.
day in, day out, and give time.
And I appreciate that you mentioned that again, because as I've been expanding and growing myself, I've realized that it's not these big things; it's the small things that we do each and every day that compound and create the great successes. It's not just we don't jump from here to here. It's all those little decisions that we make every day. And
Mhm.
with that being said, not every day is perfect. We're still humans. We have a wide range of emotions, and we're going to experience those days where we feel discouraged, or those moments where we go through those dark nights of the soul. And I do believe those help expand us and grow us. Um, how do you move yourself out of those days where you're feeling discouraged or not feeling in such a high, vibration or a high frequency? How do you move yourself out of that?
This is an thank you for the the question. It is an ongoing
Mhm.
battle. I haven't still found a method which is so simple that I can just snap my fingers and get out of this. You use the phrase "dark night of the soul," or dark. It could be a dark morning of the
Yeah,
soul, or
1 hour.
hour. So uh, there are things that one thing that certainly will change that once I realized. I think the first thing is to realize that I am on that negative inner loop, and the sooner I realize it, the earlier, the easier it is to
Mhm.
deal with it, because sometimes you tend to go into a spiral down, a negative
Yeah,
one, and before you know it,
you
it's
can do.
so the earlier I realize it, the easier it is. Taking a break is one good thing to do, a break of what I doing, going back to my routines, the foundation, some elements of it, especially physical exercise, even if it's jumping up and down on my rebounder for 1 minute, it helps. It changes things. Or if I can go out and have a walk, take a break. It doesn't always happen in the way that I would like to, and I'm very honest here. I can't say that, you know what, I've figured out how to deal with every
We're
dark.
human. We're
Yes,
human, and it's
but
progress, not
it's
perfection.
there is progress happening. Yes, so I'm better off catching myself when I go down the spiral than earlier on.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Well, it speaks to the awareness. Like, awareness is key. Like, once we're aware and just catching that thought, like you said, it's helpful. And also myself, I find myself when I have those days or those moments, I've also recognized that I don't stay in it as long. It's not as intense. I'm aware of it, but the habits, those morning rituals really help move me out of it a little bit faster than, back in the day when I was just like, go, go, go. Who has time for meditation? Who has time for being out in nature? Um, what I didn't realize is those things help us stay grounded and make us actually more successful and more productive. But, I wasn't ready to hear that back then.
To add, if I can add to what you just
Always.
said, the if anyone says I don't have time to do meditation or I don't have time to do journaling, then you definitely need to do it.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. I think I've shared this story before because I feel so foolish. When I started as an entrepreneur 23 years ago, I always had business coaches. And
Hmm.
one of my first coach, he said to me, what I recommend that you do, because I was just spinning and I have so much going on, was take 20 minutes a day to meditate. And I hung up the phone and I thought, this guy is out of his mind, out of his mind. Like, I'm really going to take 20 minutes to sit and do nothing. Um, but I think we don't take, once we're ready, what is it? When the student is ready, the teacher arrives. So I wasn't ready at
Hmm.
that moment,
Hmm.
and I wish I was, but then I wouldn't have learned everything I did, you know, over over the years. I could relate.
100%. Yes, I know what you mean exactly.
And like you said, it's a journey. It's a journey. And let me know, how does this, I feel like we're always in the right place at the right time. Like, we're exactly where we need to be.
I agree. I don't think there is any other way. Every time I remember I read something years ago and it made a big impact on me that said that every person at every given moment they're doing the best they can with
Yeah.
the mindset and the information that they have. No one is doing less than their best, but the the thing is to change what we consider to be best by inputting new information or new changing upgrading our
Yes.
mindset, or doing it's not just about the mindset, of course, it's other things as well, spiritual development, all
Yes,
those things.
all connected.
But yeah, we need to do the work, do the
Yeah,
work.
do the work. Yes,
Mm,
do the work. And it's not easy to do the work. And the work, I'm assuming you're referring to the healing,
the inner work,
digging deep.
yes.
And thank you so much for the reminder that we are all doing the best we can from the place we are based on the information and experiences we have at that time,
Hmm.
and the resources and tools that we have at that time. And sometimes I forget that because I get frustrated with, the people around me, especially my loved ones, when I see the potential in them, however they can't see it. So I have to remind myself that they're responding from the knowledge they have at that time. They're doing the best they can. So
You
thank you.
You're welcome, and you remind me that phrase that you can't teach anyone anything. All you can do is help them to
Yes.
discover it within themselves.
Yes.
So it's not you doing it; they uncover it somehow inside them.
Mhm. We guide
When
them.
they're ready. If they're not
That's
ready,
right.
you can try as much as you want. They won't accept it.
No, and I've learned that the very, very hard way, Augie, the very hard way. So
Yeah,
I know these days that podcasting is incredible. I started my own podcast. It's going to be actually coming up on a year, so maybe we have an anniversary show.
congratulations.
Thank you. So if someone's watching, I mean, what can you tell, someone who's watching who's interested in creating a podcast? What can you share? What's one thing they can do to start moving towards that dream of becoming a podcaster?
I say the most important or the starting question you need to answer yourself if you want to have a podcast is why.
Mm,
Clarify your why in detail and go down to levels of why. Don't get just a superficial why because, I would like being behind the microphone or I would like to make more impact. These are very superficial reasons. Really dig deep and devote some time and think about that. Write down, you should write, a few paragraphs really of why you want to have a podcast because that for me is the first step. And when I
mm,
work with people, I will really insist on them giving that information very clearly because it really helps in everything else when you know why you're doing it. Of course, that's for everything, not just for podcasts, but yeah, in this particular case, why do you want to have a podcast is the first thing. And if I add quickly a second one, who are you doing it for?
mm.
Who is the person that you want to listen to it?
So
So
in the who being your audience.
yes,
Okay.
yes, what we say the ideal audience, but these are just uh, initially anyway. There are things that just give you the opportunity to think. It's not like you will have your audience next or in front of you, but it's good to picture that in your mind, know who is it, or the idea, the avatar, as we say, and then address.
The avatar. Yeah.
Yes,
And the why, you're right. It's the why you gain clarity. And what I've learned in the past from doing how do you say it, the breaking down, like why, okay, and then why. I think you do seven times
seven
to get
layers. Yes,
to the core of it, which, like you mentioned, typically it's something that is more intrinsic and spiritual once we get down to it.
yes, yes.
That's
For
deep.
me, it was contribution at the very, very bottom of it. It was contribution. Yeah.
And for me it was connection.
Hmm.
I love connecting and feeling connected and having meaningful, that's what fills me. It's the connection and
Yes.
meaningful conversations.
It
And
shows.
I thank you. And I can't believe that the time has flown by so fast. I could stay here with you for another hour because I am enjoying our conversation so much. And what I would love if you can kind of tell us a little bit about what you do and how our audience can and find you if they're interested in starting their own podcast and how you can support them in that.
Sure, thank you very much. Well, I will say first of all, my podcast is Personal Development Mastery, so you can find it wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'm sure that Grace will also link it somewhere.
Okay.
Uh, as for what I do, what I'm really passionate about now, having realized how much being a podcaster transformed me and changed me in so many ways, what I do is facilitate that for others, because I've done with my podcast, I started doing everything myself. So it took very steep learning curves. It took a lot of time to, figure everything out. I wanted to do that and I don't regret doing that, but it was a
Right.
tremendous amount of time invested to learn things, how to do things. So I know that this is off-putting for many people to start and have their podcast. The amount of time it gets to learn how to do it, basically. And when I say do it, I don't mean just recording something on your phone and putting it out there. I mean doing something that is professional, that is quality, like what you are doing, what I'm doing. So I facilitate that I work with coaches who are ready to take that step and want to have their own podcast. And I take them by the hand and remove all complexity, basically. And in a very short time, we can go from, oh, I would like to have a podcast, but I don't have any idea of where to start, to actually having a podcast, attracting audience, fulfilling your objectives, and all that in a very short amount of time, a few weeks
Oh,
or
wow.
a couple of months. Uh, if someone wants to go that fast, that is. Many people prefer to, take a little bit more time. But yeah, we can do it
Wow.
fast as that. If
So it sounds like as
someone
long as
wants.
they're committed and consistent, they can, get it going as fast as they choose.
Sure.
That's incredible.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
incredible. And so if someone's interested, can you let us know how to find you? And I will also add the link.
Absolutely. The best place, really, the central hub is my website, agikeramidas.com. There you can find links both to my podcast, and there is a button there to press if you want to start your own podcast. I actually offer a free guide about the 7 steps to take to create your podcast, which you can download from there.
Well, I'm going to be downloading that too. Oh, it's been amazing. Thank you so much for joining me today. I would love to have you on again because there's so much that we can talk about. I'm so grateful for you and just really inspired by your courage and your story. And thank you so much for being here. And for those of you that joined us today, Barbara Ross was here, Oscar, someone was here. I couldn't see who you were, so thank you. So thank you, Grace and Augie. Thank you for joining us. And for those on the replay, thank you so much for watching, listening. I know there are so many other podcasts you can listen to, and I am extremely grateful for you being here today. And if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share and rate if you choose to. I would really appreciate it. And again, thank you so much. Until next time, I wish you an incredible day ahead, and just you guys keep creating fabulous. We can create whatever life we choose. So have a fantastic rest of the day. Always great to be here with you. Take care. Hey, love, thank you so much for listening today. I am so grateful for you. I'd like to show you my appreciation by gifting you a free forgiveness self-hypnosis audio download. Part of living the fun and fabulous life is practicing forgiveness. Forgiveness can be such a long and challenging process. My intention is that this forgiveness audio will help you in practicing forgiveness, especially with yourself. Grab it by visiting daretoachieve.com/forgiveness. For more inspiring tips, make sure to connect with me on social media. Drop me a line on Facebook or Instagram at Grace Redman Dare to Achieve. Until next time, keep moving forward towards living your fabulous life.